quickly before we introduce our next guest, Matt Goodhart said he signed with the Philadelphia Phillies. Said this last night on an on-field interview in the Cape Cod League as he's playing for the Firebirds. So Matt Goodhart will sign as an undrafted free agent with the Philadelphia Phillies, and therefore will no longer be an Arkansas Razorback. Great career for the Hogs, and good luck, Matt, headed over to pro ball. I think he'll hit in the minor leagues, and he did show that he can play a pretty good corner outfield. We saw him do that at the end of the season. All right, Vince Ferrara joining us. He is a show host on 99.1 The Sports Animal in Knoxville. Also does a lot of play-by-play and studio work. Vince, I saw when Arkansas baseball was at Tennessee this year at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. I know John Wilkerson well. We've had him on the show before, and I wondered to myself, who's that guy that's sitting next to him doing some of the innings? Then I listened to you guys a couple weeks later, and it's you. You do some of that baseball play-by-play for Tennessee, so it's good to have you on the show. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello. It was obviously a crazy weekend, but yeah, I do the home games, and then I had to do in the middle inning play-by-play analyst the rest of the time. And then, fortunately, I was able to go with the team to Omaha and be there with John to call those games. It wasn't obviously a long trip like Tennessee wanted, but that was still one of those bucket list type of items that certainly you guys have been able to experience. But good to talk to you guys.
It's not going to be the last time they get there, I'll tell you that for sure, and you probably would agree with me on this. And I think it's interesting. You see some similarities here between the athletic departments at Arkansas and Tennessee, where there are a ton of extremely successful programs on campus. But the one that isn't right now is football, and that's the one, obviously, that drives the train. I saw where Danny White yesterday extended the contracts of 9 coaches, including Tony Vitello, Rick Barnes, Kelly Harper, and he said he wanted to acknowledge that he had inherited an impressive roster of coaches, which says everything about why he was hired for the job in the first place, doesn't it?
It does, and I don't know how often you see 9 coaches being announced an extension and being extended at the same time. And look, it is a reflection of the quality coaches that Danny White did inherit. Under Philip Fulmer and his shorter tenure, you did see an uptick in some of the Olympic sports. Now, I think Danny White is taking that athletic department and is going to take it to new heights. And being able to lock down a lot of the quality coaches, that's a big step. I mean, if you didn't take care of Tony Vitello specifically, and you guys know what he's all about there, if you didn't take care of him, and more importantly, give him the facilities, then you're at risk of losing him next year or in the very near future. There wasn't anything about the facility upgrades in the language of the contract, so we're still waiting to hear what those final plans will be. But that's really the biggest piece of it. Yes, they locked down Tony Vitello, $1.5 million over 5 years. But more importantly for that, there was a $900,000 pool for his assistants and staff, and then also the facilities that are going to come. That's what's going to allow them to sustain that success, like you mentioned, and that they'll be back. They need those facilities to be able to maintain and elevate, and it's long overdue. And I think Tony Vitello's success early is putting them in a position to where Tennessee has to do that for him and that program.
Yeah, the only way to really guarantee that you're going to get new facilities from your AD and chancellors is by winning and forcing their hand, and that's exactly what Tony Vitello has done. Before we move on to football, I do want to ask you kind of a Danny White question. During his time, his tenure at Central Florida, he was very loud, very out there, very look at us, look at us, look at us type of AD. Has he toned that down since he's gotten to Tennessee, since he's gotten to, quote unquote, the Power Five?
It's a good question. I would say he is, compared to UCF, it might, if you're just putting them side by side, it might be toned down just a hair. But it's not compared to the previous AD, and that he has been accessible. For example, we're at the spring game, and we're up in the press box, and Danny White is making his round, introducing himself to all the media, and then sit there, making time to chit chat with everybody. And I mean, you just don't see ADs take the time to do that. So those are little things that he's done. He's really upped the fundraising, and so he's been out. He's been on social media, but he's not doing outlandish things. So I think that's what maybe it might look like he's toned down, so to speak. But he's still very active and very visible and accessible. So from that standpoint, he's out there more than we've seen UT ADs in the past.
Josh Heupel, as his big hire, brings him over there from UCF, of course. Fewer wins each year that he was at UCF. I wonder, after the dust settles, it's months after the hire. What's the temperature now on Josh Heupel after spring ball and a week before media days? Are people willing here to give him a shot, or are they looking at this as somebody that was might have been White's top choice, but not Tennessee fans' top choice?
There's really no exact or correct answer. The best thing I could say is I think there's a large chunk that is taking a wait and see on him, to where, yeah, they're willing to give him some time. Some of them, some fans feel like, hey, there's nothing else we can do, so we will, but he's not maybe what they were hoping. Fans, this fan base, as you guys know, they set their sights on individual guys, and then it's a disappointment if that doesn't happen. I've been through so many coaching searches here; it's crazy, as you guys know. So going whether it's set your sights on John Gruden and that fantasy, and then Lane Kiffin, and it was Chip Kelly prior to Dan Mullen when he took the Florida job, and then this year it was Hugh Freeze, and so it for some it was a disappointment, and they're set in their opinion and they don't buy in. But I think a large majority of it have just been absolutely pummeled over the head constantly with coaching searches after coaching searches and underwhelming hires. They're not enthralled by it, but they're willing to give him a chance. I think he has done a really nice job of being very different from Jeremy Pruitt, which is a good thing, right? When you part ways with a coach, you want someone that's very different. And Josh Heupel is so different in a lot of ways in his coaching style and his personality. And so being accessible, being willing to talk about players, those kind of things, making his staff available, those are all things that I think can slowly start to win some people over. There'll be a little bit of a I don't want to say honeymoon, but a grace period, so to speak. But that is not going to last. That expiration date is going to be pretty quick. It's not going to be the organic milk that lasts you longer. It's going to be the regular milk that, you got about 5 days. I'm not saying it's 5 days. I'm just saying it's a shorter expiration date, to where if things don't go well in the field, you're going to see a lot of people pointing back to maybe the questions they had going in.
Yeah, the quote-unquote honeymoon phase for Heupel and UT fans, it'll be short and sweet if he doesn't produce, or at least bring hope and faith that he will produce in the future. And Vince, during Heupel's tenure at Central Florida, we know what his offenses do. I mean, I've been to many games against Central Florida, being from Memphis, and seen Heupel, and before them they put up 40, 50 points. But I've also seen Heupel's defense just last year give up 50 points to the University of Memphis. What's his defense going to look like at UT?
Well, I think it's going to be very multiple. He's got Tim Banks as defensive coordinator coming from the Big Ten at Penn State. And he's got Rodney Garner, who has spent a lot of time in the SEC. So I think Garner has been really good in recruiting for them. So it's a real blend. You have Mike Heckler, who spent time at Kansas State and Nebraska and some different spots. So you got a variety. Willie Martinez, who was also on that staff at UCF, making his second time through Rocky Top, and he was here under Butch Jones before. So it's a little bit of a mixed group on defense, and I think you're going to see more four-down linemen. I think you're going to see them initially have to be pretty simplistic. They've tried to address in the transfer portal, bringing some speed and size to their defense. I don't know if they have difference makers. Tennessee was devastated in the transfer portal. The 26 guys that weren't kicked off the team that have transferred out, with only 10 back in. And a fair amount of those had starting experience. Not everyone was a difference maker, but Oklahoma got 3 guys, and Alabama got Henry Toto, their linebackers. So there's a lot of talent, especially on defense, that is not on this team. So they're going to be undermanned, and there's not a whole lot of expectations about how this defense is going to look. So I think that's a big question mark. They're going to have to get more out of this group than definitely last year's team did. But last year there was Jeremy Pruitt. Some of the players would talk about, it took me a while to try to figure it out, and the guys kind of out of position at times, and it was very complex. I think you're going to see them do things to try to get players to play fast. Are they good enough? That's a whole other question. I personally don't think so right now. I think it's going to take a few more recruiting classes before they have a chance to really play up. They just don't have difference makers, game changers on that side of the ball right now, unless a freshman or sophomore that makes a jump really makes a quick impact. And right now, another part of it is, as we were talking about a second ago, is the NCAA stuff that's looming over them, and I think it makes it harder in recruiting. And I think some fans have to take that into account if they don't have the roster to be able to really be competitive or above average in Heupel's first year.
Wow, that's really amazing when it comes right down to that. What about a quarterback? Because, last year it was a mess, really. And, you saw Jared Garantano take, 2 steps backward in the last couple of years. And it's, what does the quarterback position look like for Tennessee in Heupel's first season?
As you can imagine, it's been a big talking point, and it's wide open, to be honest with you. And it was wide open with 5 bodies until they dismissed their true freshman from Texas, Caden Salter, who fans had really thought that, hey, he's the future. He's going to rise up above all these guys. They brought in 2 transfers, and Hendon Hooker, who started for Virginia Tech last year, Joe Milton, who started some for Michigan last year. Harrison Bailey played late in the year. He finally got an opportunity after fans were clamoring for him to get in place of Garantano during the year. And then Brian Maurer, who was just used sort of as a change of pace at times. He's been around the program. This will be his 3rd year from Ocala, and he was recruited some by the UCF staff that's now here. So I think it's open. The problem is that they don't have a finished product among the quarterbacks. They have guys that can do different things, but they don't have one guy that's risen above everybody else. Maurer was thought to be the longest shot, and during most of spring, probably had the best spring out of any of the guys until the spring game when Harrison Bailey looked better than the other guys and put up better numbers. But he never really was able to cut it loose at quarterback last year, so we haven't seen what his potential would be to throw it down the field and maybe see what he could do in this offense. Hooker was a dual threat, and he didn't really look like that in the spring. Joe Milton is not a finished product, didn't have the completion percentage at Michigan. He probably has the most upside, but now is he going to be able to take that jump in this offense? How does that fit? And then the mental part of it, the accuracy, the decision-making, that's what they've talked about, Heupel and his staff, Alex Golesh, OC, as the most important thing. I don't know that you can look at a guy and say, all right, he's got the mental game, maybe not the arm, and this guy's got the arm. It's not even that. It's incomplete in all those phases of the game. And so someone's going to have to show us things that we have not seen before in terms of the mental capability and the whole quarterback position to really separate. And I don't think there is a separator. My guess would be either Bailey or Milton, because you have to think, why would they bring Milton in when they had 4 other scholarship quarterbacks at the time if they didn't think they had issues with the guys they had? So that's why I think some of the fault goes to Milton because they brought in another guy.
Hey, Vince, we got to run. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yep.
Let's do this again as the season approaches, see how those Tennessee Vols are doing. Definitely basketball, and I don't know, remember if baseball plays it next year or not. We'll find out. But thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, Vince.
You got it. We were going to ask him if he's always got Rocky Top stuck in his head, because you can't go there for an event without it getting
No, you can't.
stuck in your head like
And
the
I hate
largest,
the song.
most rotten earworm you've ever heard in your life.